You blocked him off phone calls, texts, etc., and Facebook. Good. Good. That was that just this week then that you made that step? Awesome. Awesome. I didn't realize that. That's really great. That's really great that you took this step because wow, it's going to make things so much better. So much better. I think it's like all of us, like we just underestimate the power that contact has, right? Or even looking at their Facebook page or catching a photo of them or something. I heard from someone last week and he just went and looked at her Facebook photo and she looked really nice. She was all dressed up to go out and it sent him into this downward spiral tailspin for like probably a week now. And it's just unbelievable. The power of that. I wish I didn't have to break no contact for the item I discussed with you. Yeah, it's okay though. I mean, don't hold that against yourself. Don't like just stew in the regret of that. Do you know what I mean? Because you learned that frying pan lesson that I was talking about earlier that sometimes some of us just have to learn, which is the hard way, like really, really so painful that it finally just breaks through that denial where it's just so clear that breaking the no contact is not a good idea. It's the only power that you have over them, because if you don't respond or if you don't reach out, then they have no power whatsoever, none whatsoever. So that's really the way to maintain your power to keep, that self-control is the no contact. The Facebook page I know of only has me in it. God knows what else he has. I know he's still using porn, etc. He got worse. He got worse after you broke up. This is probably just information you gathered through the grapevine, I'm guessing. Or do you mean he got worse like as you were with him? He was possibly always that way because I caught him and he denied it. Yeah, that's really possible. They say they get worse with age, like they don't get better, they get worse with age. Um, and I think that's probably true. And I think that they also probably get less skilled because when they're younger, they're more attractive. The women narcissists, when they're younger, they're more attractive. The male narcissists, it's about money mostly for them. Yes, he's like a teenager. Yeah. Yeah, they don't mature. The emotional maturity is still, it could be like a toddler. It could be like a teenager, just like a very childish. It's very stunted emotional growth. And they do tend to get a lot worse. It's just that people tend to see through their manipulations a lot easier. Like the older they get, like the less careful they are. I noticed in some family members too who are narcissists, like the older they get, the less of that filter of control they have and the more obvious it is. The things they say, you're like, wow, did they really just say that? Yeah, they did. And it almost like reminds me of someone who develops dementia where like they're living in a delusional world. And I think probably for some narcissists, it's like that because they're living in such a delusional world, they go on and they go on and they go on and they get into old age and they're still living this delusional world, except that now they lack the filters of control to carefully frame that to people. So then it just becomes really obvious to people that they are living in a completely delusional world. And I think it probably could be, very similar, if not confused with symptoms of like dementia. But yeah, I see what you're saying though. Like it always was that way, most likely. It's just that he was better at hiding it at the beginning, and then you caught him obviously and he denied it. And at that point, he probably started acting out even more. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I see that someone else just joined us too. Hi, you're welcome to either use your microphone or your headset to ask a question. This will be posted on YouTube afterwards. So if you don't want your voice, if you want to be anonymous, you can type it in the chat and I won't read your name out loud. I'll just read the question anonymously and answer it. And then you could have your identity protected. Feel free to go ahead and open the chat and type a message if you have a question. I confronted him about everything and he still denied the gaslighting. Lesson learned, I will never break no contact. Yeah. Yeah. They just don't admit it, you know, and the only time they do admit what's going on is when they can use that against you, you know, when they can somehow blame you for something, or, you know, remind you of something from the past that you did, or turn it around and falsely accuse you in the present day of doing something, or, you know, like more of a character attack against you and who you are, and how dare you say such a thing. And it just doesn't go well. You know, it's like as humans, I think we really want to know the truth. Like, we want to ask the truth. We want them to admit the truth. And it's like this almost like undying seeking to know that truth. But unfortunately, that just doesn't go anywhere with narcissists, because they're so entitled to treat people like that and get away with it, because they don't take personal accountability unless they can blame you, you know, but it's never their fault. And they don't make things right. You know, like sometimes some of them will say they're sorry, but they don't mean it, because they'll turn around and do the same thing that day, that hour, that week, that month, and nothing changes. And it's just incredibly exhausting trying to get them to admit what they're doing, trying to get them to come clean, trying to get them to make right what's wrong. It's so exhausting. So you have to give that validation to yourself. You got to trust your intuition and know exactly. I heard it so many times over the years. Yeah, you got to trust yourself. You got to give yourself that validation. And, you know, something I used to struggle with, and I learned, and now I tell people, like, if you are second guessing yourself, that's already a sign something's not right. Like, if you're feeling really confused and doubtful, but maybe this or maybe that, that's a sign something is not right. Something is not true. It's definitely a sign, and to pay attention to that. And yeah, the gaslighting, like, you can end up feeling much worse. Like, you can confront somebody about it and end up feeling much, much worse. So you have to validate yourself. He broke me down. Thank God I'm okay now. And I'm so grateful for how far I've come this year. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy for you too, because they really do. It's like they systemically break you down. They devastate you. They exploit your qualities. They exploit everything that you own. They exploit your entire life, and they won't stop at anything until you cut that off. And I'm really glad that you went no contact now. And I'm really glad that you understand that that is the best way to move forward, because you don't want to go back to that. You don't want to feel like that. And, you know, if you honestly look at, like, from the point you broke no contact to how long it took you to get back to the emotional state you were in before you broke no contact, like, how much time did you lose, right? Like, how many days or weeks did you lose? And that's what I was telling this other person last week, who told me that he didn't even have contact. He didn't even reach out. He simply looked at her picture on Facebook, and it sent him, you know, into this emotional tailspin for at least a week now. And he's not doing better yet. And that's what can happen. You know, like, we put so much into that. And then even just the hope that maybe they'll reach out, or they'll contact you, or they'll respond. And it's just very, very dangerous. Very dangerous, because you have to be there for yourself first. You have to protect yourself first. Opening that door is just transferring your power to that person. The only way to win that game is to walk away, because you don't win that game. You never win that game. And even in the moments where it might seem like you finally won a small battle in that big war, they'll turn around and they'll punish you much worse for what you did. And sometimes it won't be in the moment. Some of them react immediately. They're very quick. They're very good at reacting immediately. But sometimes they'll kind of let you think that you won. And they'll go quiet for a little while, and then they'll gather up their energy, and then they'll just hit you with something much, much worse. I'm okay. I knew in my gut he never gave a shit about me. Yeah, it's still a hard pill to swallow. It's still hard to admit to yourself that this person that you loved didn't care about you. You know, it's still very, very hard to accept that, I think, for all of us. Because, you know, there were those moments where we all saw those redeeming qualities, like, and we all dream about the good times and back in the beginning when everything was better, or when they're behaving kindly, and we just keep hoping and praying that that's really who that person is, and they're going to decide to go ahead and be that person, and put away all this other abusive behavior. But it's just not like that. And it's important to remember too that the abuse cycle is both of those. The abuse cycle is the kind and the cruel. It's not one without the other. And I think in our minds, we want to separate those, and we often want to think about the kind things and the good things and forget about all the abusive things. And like that's our like hoping and praying that they're going to wake up and realize and have this epiphany and apologize and make it right and do better. But they don't. They just don't. And the kind cruel, the back and forth, the intermittent reinforcement, that is the abuse cycle. It's purposely done that way. Like the Stockholm syndrome, where the trauma bond takes place between an abuser and a victim, or a captor and a hostage. It depends on that act of kindness, because if it were only cruelty and horrible things, you know, the victim might not develop like that empathy for the abuser, for the captor, you know, and that's a survival mechanism, to develop that empathy for them. And all they have to do is offer you that one little shred of kindness, and it hooks you right back into that. I think I swallowed that a year ago. My recovery started that day. You swallowed the acceptance that he didn't care about you. Is that what you're saying? That was the day that your recovery started? Yes, it all came together. Yeah. Yeah. That acceptance is a big deal, you know, because when you accept what it really is, when you see it for what it really is, that's when everything starts to change, you know, versus looking at it with the wishful thinking, you know, the magical thinking, hoping that everything will just work out. And the sick thing is that's why they preyed on us, you know, like that's what pre-qualified us for those relationships is, you know, a high degree of compassion, a high degree of empathy, unconditional love, forgiveness, patience. All of these are virtues that narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths take advantage of, because they know that you will always give them more benefit of the doubt, and they can keep hurting you, and you're still going to hope, and you're still going to forgive, and you're still going to love them. And that's why they chose us, right? But it's important also to recognize that those same qualities that got us into those relationships are the same qualities that are going to help us heal. Those same qualities will help you move forward. And oh, yes, it all came together. Yeah, when you finally accept the truth, that changes everything. Like they say, the truth will set you free, and that is no joke, because it really will. It sets you free from the wishful thinking, from investing energy and time into some kind of reality that will never exist. You know, that changes everything. That's, you know, all your power is going to this like illusion, this lie, this idea of what that is, because you can't stop thinking about it. And then as soon as you realize the truth, you know, all that power comes back to you, and you realize, wow, that wasn't it at all. You know, it was entirely something else. And that acceptance is a really hard part. It's really, really hard, because I think a lot of us just want to keep believing in people, believing in the good in people. And that is the huge wake-up call that comes after these relationships, is realizing that there is evil in this world. There are evil people in this world. There are people doing horrible, awful things to people. And, you know, it's happening on an interpersonal level, on a familial level, and on a societal level. And maybe before this happened, most of us didn't want to believe that. Most of us wanted to believe in the good of everyone, and, you know, have only positive feelings about things. But there is this other aspect of life. And I think that's, you know, that's one of the gifts here, is that you're more awakened to reality after these experiences. What else? What else do you guys have? You're welcome. Until another question comes, I'm just going to go back to what you wrote here too. Knowing in your gut that he didn't give a shit about you, that he didn't care about you. I think for a lot of us, coming to that acceptance and that realization was like a big part of the shame, because accepting that means that like this wave of shame kind of comes over you after that, because you feel like you allowed for it, like you continued to go through it even though your intuition knew, and all of us knew at some level, even when we deny, no, I didn't see it, I really, at some level we did, because all those red flags were there. It's just a lot easier to see in retrospect. When we were in it, we didn't want to see the truth, and then afterward, accepting the shame that comes of it, that's a big part of it, because that shame, it just like it bleeds through your life, and you start to actually believe sometimes what this abusive person was telling you, and you start to doubt yourself and who you are. And having to process that shame, which is on the other side of acceptance, that's a big hurdle. That's a big hurdle. So I'm really proud of you for going through that, for getting through that, for accepting that. That's a huge, huge obstacle to get through. And don't beat yourself up about breaking the no contact, because you get it now. Like, it's solid. Like, there's no more question in your mind. You totally get it. You finally cut all that off. I'm proud of me too. Good. You should be. You should be proud of yourself. Remind yourself of that every day. Like, even when it gets hard too, be like, you know what? It's okay. It's going to get better. Like, I'm doing the work, right? I already did this huge piece of work. That's all behind me. Because like, girl, the hardest part is already behind you, right? Now it's going to be a lot easier. And just keep reminding yourself of the successes that you've already had, because celebrating the success you've already had is what helps you leap forward, gets momentum going, towards the future goals, towards each of those steps that you're taking toward the future and your healing and your recovery. So celebrate that, like, rather than focusing on beating yourself up for breaking no contact, which like everybody does at some point. But rather than focusing on that part, focus on the successes that you had, that you saw it, that you realized it, that you cut him off, you made that decision, you accepted the reality. Those are huge things. And you left him, right? All of that is the hardest part that you've already come over. You're doing good. I have never in my entire life said those words about myself. I am very proud of me. Wow. Wow. Well, in that case, part of your gratitude practices, right? Because like, it's so hard to find something to be grateful for in those experiences. But the reality is that there always is something to be grateful for. And the more grateful you can be, the more abundance there will be in your life. So if you focus on this, like the gratitude of, you know what, thanks to you and thanks to that relationship, I was able to find this within myself. Now, you did all that work. He didn't do that work for you, right? But because of him entering your life and being that catalyst, here you are for the first time in your life telling yourself, I'm very proud of me. I'm very proud of the actions I took, of the decisions I made. That's major. That's major. So that's at least one thing to be grateful for. Amen. Yeah. Yeah, that's at least one thing to be grateful for. And that's a big thing. That's a really big thing. You guys can feel free to write questions in the chat. If you would like to speak, you can either let me know or you can unmute your microphone. Just remember that if you speak with your voice, it'll be in the YouTube recording. If you want to be totally anonymous, you can type your question in the chat box. I also feel that he thought I was hoovering him. Because you reached out to him? Is that what you mean? Yes. Yeah. I mean, I made that mistake before too, sending in emails to my former business partner, telling him he still hasn't paid me. I gave him everything. Where's my money? And I realized later, I almost felt like, oh, like I wish I hadn't done that. Like, the part of me that was seeking justice, that was like, he needs to right this wrong. We signed a legal contract. He didn't pay me. And I was following up on that. But at the same time, it was like, it was almost as if I was hoovering him. It was almost as if like I was trying to get him back into this dynamic, when really I just needed to be far away from that. I just needed to accept that he was never going to pay me, and me sending him emails was only going to make it worse, because there were two options. One, he ignored it. And then I felt horrible knowing that he would ignore it, or he would ignore it for like a month or something. Or the other option is, he would write back and be all, your emails just serve as entertainment for me. I just laugh at everything you say, which just feels horrible. So, I beat myself up for that for a little while. I didn't know about no contact. When I read about no contact, I realized like that was the only way forward. Like there was no resolution. Like he wasn't going to make it right. That's not the kind of person he is. And for me to give away my power by reaching out and reminding him that he still didn't make it right it made me feel lower. It made me feel like a piece of crap, because I put myself in that situation. And it really it is the only way. The only way forward is no contact. In your case, thankfully, and in my case, that was easy. There were no children. In people's situations where there are children, that is like a huge lesson in boundaries, because you can't be no contact, at least not until the kids are 18, when they're fully adults. But even so, it's pretty much like signing up for a lifetime of connection with that person, and having to manage very low or minimum contact with very firm boundaries. That's exhausting too. But that's the reality for a lot of people who share children with them. He will never let her go. I'm on about the ex because the kid is 18 now. Oh, I see what you're saying. He won't let the ex go. Yeah. Yeah, because in their case, they're in some kind of mutual narcissistic what's that called? There's two stars. Binary. There's some kind of like narcissistic binary rotation around each other, it seems. Even though he says he hates her, yeah, he's still getting something from her. Or they wouldn't be playing it like that, because it's not just about the kid. You've already realized there's a lot more going on there. And that's kind of a different situation, because they're both narcissists, right? Which are the more rare situations. More typically is what you see is like the narcissist and the codependent kind of personality. And in that situation, the codependent really has to learn boundaries. Like that's pretty much a lifetime lesson in boundaries, and setting very clear boundaries, and forcing them, being able to have like a minimum contact with that person strictly about the kids, nothing else, being totally gray rock otherwise, not showing any kind of emotion or happiness or sadness or any of that, because the narcissist will take advantage of that. And the more boring you are, the more uninteresting you are, hopefully they just get on and find new sources of supply. The sadness is the children, though, who are suffering the most from that situation. You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions? No questions at the moment? Okay, so here's a question for you. What do you guys want to chime in here? What are you grateful for? So I'm not sure. I think some of you might actually still be in the relationship with the narcissist. Some of you are out. What are you grateful for? Is there one thing that comes to you that you're grateful for, that relationship or for that person, something that they served in your life? What is that? Icon? What does that mean? Oh, it's you thinking. Okay. Okay. Yeah, feel free to chime in, you guys. Write in the chat something that you're grateful for. Just one thing that you're grateful for is something that you realized, maybe in retrospect, after you got out, even while you're in it, something that you're grateful for, something you learned, something valuable that you wouldn't have tapped into if you hadn't have entered into that situation, that relationship. Awareness. Good.
Meredith, can I answer that question?
Sure.
Okay. I just thought about it. I'm grateful every day. I've been out for 7 months, and every day I'm grateful that just I'm out of it and everything. But the one thing that I'm grateful for, that when I was in it, is in the very beginning for about 2 months, he love bombed me so hard and told me just all these wonderful, great things. And of course, I believed him, and it turned out, all to be not true. It's just a lie. He was using me. But I think back to those things, and I kind of pretend in my mind like they're true, and just to have to hear those things.
Maybe some of those are true.
Well, I mean, I pretend in my mind that they are true. I know he was lying to me. I know he was just using me, but just to make myself feel better, I try to to believe that they were true.
So the interesting thing about that is, maybe he did notice your good qualities, right? And maybe he also noticed that maybe other people never complimented you on those qualities and those parts of you. Like maybe there was something even that you were really self-conscious about, and he really honed in on and, idealized in the beginning. Never mind the devaluation now, but was there something like that?
Yeah, I know that now because I've done so much research on, especially on YouTube about, narcissists and everything, and I know that he watched me really close. Even when I didn't even know it, he was just always watching me, and things like putting on makeup every day and fixing my hair. It's just since I was 16 years old, every day it's what I do, and especially if there's a man around. And he noticed that. He would always tell me how beautiful I was and, all these things. And the last thing he said to me when he left, well, minus the curse words, he called me ugly, and he told me that I was aging badly.
Right. So he took everything that he flattered you about earlier and then totally denied it in that final.
Yes, because he left 6 days after my birthday, and I turned 48, and I was he was 46, and I felt like I was old, and he would tell me, "No, you're beautiful. You don't look 48." All this stuff, and then the last thing he told me before I left, I was ugly and I was aging badly.
Right. Because that was just to hurt you. Right.
Yeah.
That was just as meaningless as, all the bombing and stuff. But right. So maybe he told you things that you were just dying for someone to tell you. Like you were dying to feel that way, and someone felt that way, and someone validated those things about you, that you are attractive, that you are beautiful, that you are someone that someone wants to adore in that way.
Well, of course, I loved hearing those things,
Right.
and I felt so horrible when he said those things. I mean, but I knew that he wanted to fight with me, and I wouldn't do that. So I just didn't say anything. But after he left, I went and over time spent all this money on all these expensive beauty products and stuff that I wouldn't normally buy. So I actually do look pretty good now.
Nice. Okay. So he encouraged you to take a little better care of yourself. Now you got skin. So, nice.
Well, he was always taking money from me. So, or I would be giving him money because he was using me, money that I wouldn't have for myself. Now he was gone. I had all this extra money for myself. So I went out and bought this stuff.
You go, girl. That's awesome. Okay, so he encouraged you to take better care of yourself. So now you can be the one looking in the mirror, telling yourself how beautiful you are, how amazing you look, how you don't look 48. Now it's up to you to carry that forward. He just reminded you of that. It was sort of like a very perverse way for him to bring that to your attention, you know, that you wanted to remind yourself that. Because if always you wanted to hear someone else say that, it's probably because you weren't telling yourself that enough. You weren't giving yourself that validation enough.
Yeah, well, he would tell me this stuff so much that it made me uncomfortable. You know, like I don't need to hear it all the time, all the time, all the time. Of course, now I know, you know, it's fake. It was all fake. He never met any, and I love you 1,000 times a day. I don't need to hear that like that. But he was just trying so hard to get me hooked in because I responded to one of your videos, and I told you that I was raised by narcissists. So I'm kind of used to being around them, but I didn't know he was. I really didn't know he was one in the beginning. But for some reason, you know, he had to do all those things just to hook me in, and he finally did. But he went overboard with everything.
Right. So was it kind of similar? Is that maybe why you didn't really notice what was happening at first? It just felt so familiar to growing up in the narcissistic family?
Well, in the beginning, the love bombing, it felt like, oh my God, I found my soulmate, right? And I was so happy. And then the abuse started. And then I started to feel comfortable with the abuse. Like then he would leave. And when he would leave, oh, my heart would hurt so bad. I'd want him back. And then he would come back. And then the abuse would start again. It just was a cycle over and over again. And I even told him, I said, you know, I feel like the way I felt with my parents with you, it feels horrible, but it feels comfortable. And I don't know why I should have told him that, but I had to tell somebody, but I did. I told him that, but that it felt comfortable, even though it was painful and it hurt, and I didn't like it, but it was familiar. It wasn't comfortable. It was familiar.
Right. That's the thing, right? Is like the familiarity is comfortable, even though it's painful. It's like the subconscious resists changing because it's familiar. And so it's like seeking the same old patterns.
Yeah. Like I could never laugh. If I laughed at something, he would say, actually use the same words that my stepfather used. Are you mocking me? Are you mocking me? Wow. No, I'm laughing. You know, I couldn't laugh. I couldn't smile. If there was what's his name? Seth Rogen was on Jimmy Fallon or something one night, and I was staring at him, like squinting my eyes. So I wasn't wearing my glasses because he was wearing red bottom shoes, and it just blew up in this whole big thing because I was looking at this guy. I said, no, I was looking at his shoes. And he says, but you like him. I said, well, he's funny. Also, he makes you laugh. You know, just on and on and on all night. I thought, oh, God.
Right. Because it's all about them. You know, like if you're laughing, your stepdad assumed you were making fun of him because everything is about him. And if you were all interested in this other man or found some kind of like positive quality in some other man, then it activates their insecurity.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that I always got the feeling he was always looking for someone else. Everywhere where he went, his eyes were all over the place, everywhere, except for on me.
Which is exactly why he was accusing you of doing that thing, because that's what he was.
Yeah, with the guy on TV.
Right. Some celebrity that you're never actually going to meet. Yeah. So, okay. So that's awesome. So you came out of this relationship with a heck of a lot more money now that he's not draining all your finances.
Yeah.
And you went ahead and invested some of that in yourself. Now you're taking better care of, you know, yourself, your body, your beauty. And now you can feel that from within yourself. So now you don't need a man to tell you that. Now you validate yourself. And from now on, you only want to be around a man who just naturally sees that about you instead of needing to manipulate that, you know, because that guy probably latched onto the fact that no one ever said that to you or that you didn't hear it enough, that sort of thing, and that you felt bad about it. But if you have that confidence and you're just radiating that beauty, you know, people aren't going to sense that you have this like need to fill. You won't be attracting someone who's going to hone in on that and want to manipulate that.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. And if somebody does come at me like that, then I'm hoping that I'll be able to feel it and not buy into it.
Right. Because the more you know yourself, the more you know how attractive you are, the more you show up like that, the less you're going to want to even be around someone like that. Like maybe you'll meet someone who says something or does something, but like as soon as you hear it, like your whole face just wants to like cringe up because you don't like that at all. You're like, oh, I know exactly what that is. No, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping. But I
Trust
haven't
yourself.
met. I haven't met anyone since he left. It's been 7 months,
That's
and
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it takes time.
Well, I was in this really severe depression for months, where I didn't really even leave the house. I was trying to get myself together because I was very upset,
Right.
and just in the past couple of months, it's really started, going out again.
Good. You're starting to be a little more social.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's good. Yeah, I think it's really important to take it slow after these relationships, to allow yourself all the time that you need for healing, because there could be a long time where, like you said, you felt depressed, and all of us went through that, devastated, initially. And that starts to heal, and it starts to heal, and eventually you start being a little more social and putting yourself out there a little more. And even in meeting people, I really recommend taking it slow, like getting to know someone a long time before taking your relationship to a physical level, for example, because like the sex is a hook, and it's that additional dimension of hook, which, like, if you're just getting to know a person as a person and you're talking and hanging out and spending time together, you really get to know that person and who they are before you take that next step, in case you realize, you see their true colors and you're like, whoa, I need to get out of here. It's a lot easier to leave when you haven't made that connection, because when you're just hanging out with someone and even developing an emotionally intimate kind of connection, it can still feel like a heartbreak, like a soul split when you're leaving. But the sexual layer it's like flesh ripping apart, like not just soul, but actual flesh. And it is so painful, to leave those relationships. So I always tell people, like, take it real slow. Don't jump into bed with new people. Like, really get to know them, let them paint themselves, because people do paint themselves. Like, if you just allow them and we don't try to like see what we want to see and that sort of thing, people reveal themselves. And if you give someone, 3 months or so, you're already starting to see more about them. Even 6 months, now you see a lot more about them. But not rushing things, because if you're not meeting anybody right away, that's good. That's just a sign that, like, you just need more time for you. You need more time to still heal from it. Because 7 months, it might seem like a long time. It's actually not that long. Like, some people take a year, 2 years to really heal from the devastation of that kind of relationship. So be patient with yourself too.
Yeah. Well, also, I say 7 months. I mean 7 months, no contact.
Oh,
We
good.
had broken up and then gotten back together, broken up, gotten back together. I mean, 20 times. It just. But this was the final. I've had absolutely no contact in 7 months.
That's
So
awesome.
it's not the first time that we've broken up. Because
That's
the first time, I mean, it was so incredibly painful, and I just didn't see it coming. It came out of nowhere, and I really just wanted to die. It was the hardest thing ever. But
Did he
one
discard
thing,
you the first time?
I'm sorry, what?
Did he discard you the first time?
Yes, he told me that he was with somebody
Mm,
after he had, I mean, completely loved on me. He was in love with me. I mean, just the day before I had said that, but he was, and I know now it was all a plan.
right,
About how he had it all planned out. But
right.
one thing I was going to say is what you were saying is a problem that I have. It's like I move too fast also, because if somebody makes a move on me, like, I want them to like me. And if I say no, I'm afraid, and I'm 48 years old. I shouldn't be like this. I should know by now, don't do this. But that is how I am. Now, a couple months ago, I did go out, and there was a guy there, and he was like dancing with me and kind of coming on to me, and I wasn't attracted to him at all. So it was easy for me to push him away and say no. But if he was somebody that I was attracted to, I would want him to like me, and I don't know if it would have went that way. And I don't want to
Right.
be that way. I don't know how not to be that way.
Because you learned that growing up, right?
I was abused. I was sexually abused growing up, yeah.
Right. So I had the same thing happen when I was a child. There's that, which is like the people pleasing thing. But I noticed another layer of that was, even though I consciously knew I had the right to say no, it was like subconsciously, I didn't believe that. And like in the moment when I wanted to say no, my body was like paralyzed. Like I couldn't say no. Like I knew I could just stand up and walk out the door, but there was like something stopping me, and I would fight it. No, 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 no. But then I would finally give in. And I really, like at 37 years old, this was like a year ago, this happened the last time. And I realized like, wow, that's still programmed in me. I need to stop that, because you do have the right to say no. And it doesn't mean that this person just to reject you just because you don't want to sleep with them. If that's the case, it's not a person to hang around, you know. But remembering that like you have control over your body, that you have the right to say no, that you have the right to say how much you're going to engage with this person or not. And if they don't like you because you won't take it to that level of physicality, that's not somebody you want in your life, because that's somebody who just wants that, you know, if it's that big of a deal.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
Steve Harvey, you know, this guy is really funny. I think he does like a Family Feud or something, but he does some other like comedy things. He wrote this book, and I think it was something like
Think Like a Man.
Yes, Think Like a Man, Act Like a Woman. And he says
Yeah.
like wait 30 days to have sex. And I read that book maybe like 4 years ago. And I remember when I read that book, I was like, oh my God, like how am I going to keep a guy around for 30 days? Whoa, like that's where society is at, right? Society is now teaching us that 30
But
days.
that's where I'm at. That's where I've been at my whole life. I mean, I'm not kidding. And it sounds horrible, but it's true.
Right. Right. And the thing is, like, real quality people are going to invest that time. They're also going to want to get to know you before taking that jump themselves, you know, like healthy people. And society has really twisted that up, you know, and really twisted that up. And if you look at the youngsters now, like even in high school, like that's happening way too much, way too soon. It's just becoming like this sort of this expectation. And I think we really need to define this in dating in terms of like getting to actually know a person, you know, waiting a minimum of 30 days, but probably more like 3 months, because
Exactly.
you know, people can fake things for a month. They can, you know, narcissists can definitely wear the mask, sometimes even for more than 3 months. But if you give someone between 3 to 6 months, you can really start to see who they are, you know, really start to see their colors. And I really think that that's the way forward in dating.
Yeah. If I would have given this guy just a couple weeks, you know, it would have started coming out. His mask would have started slipping, and I would have, you know, he would have started getting abusive. You know, I
You
didn't.
knew
It
immediately.
would have happened anyway. Yeah. But I saw on other YouTube channels, and they said that sometimes narcissists can hide, sometimes for decades. And that's why I made that comment. I said, it feels like no one is safe, because I think like you, like wait 3 or 4 months, you know, get to know someone. But they say they can hide for years, decades even.
I've heard stories of a lot of people in their 50s and 60s saying that they were married 10, 20, 30 years before they realized what was happening. And wow, like I don't know that they were necessarily hiding so long. I think that that person might also have major enabling issues where they were in so much denial for a long period of time. I don't doubt that some people can hold, you know, that mask longer than others, but I definitely think that there's signs there. And something too about like the borderline personalities, they sometimes can hold that mask a lot longer. I've talked to a lot of men who got into relationships. Okay, so this guy right here, he says 10 years for him before you realized. I've talked to a lot of men who got into marriages with women who were like so empathic and awesome and adoring and loving and emotional, because, you know, the borderlines definitely have a much greater spectrum of emotion than like the narcissistic personality disorder or the antisocial. And I think they might be the trickiest ones, because they can go and go and go and go until that point where they reach that rage. And from what I hear, the borderline rage is like way worse than the narcissistic rage or even the sociopathic rage, because the borderline goes to the borderline of psychosis. Like they literally lose it. The narcissist usually always calculates the consequence. Like they don't want to get into trouble. They don't want to ruin their image of perfection or whatever image they're putting out there. They usually think through, and the narcissist tends not to want to like burn the whole house down, because they just want to abuse everybody, but keep the structure there so that it can keep going on. Otherwise they have to go create that whole structure somewhere else. Whereas the borderline, when they get into that point of rage, they'll burn everything and everyone. And they have the highest suicide rate, I imagine the highest murder rate. And it can be incredibly dangerous. And it seems like they can hide longer because they have more of that emotional nature than the narcissists and sociopaths. And I really think that education is the key, because I think knowing what you know now, and I'd like to ask you, to the guy who wrote this, knowing what you know now, looking back in those 10 years, do you see some of those red flags? Like, were there moments when some of that was bleeding through and you just didn't know what to look for because this hadn't this hadn't crossed maybe your awareness yet, right? You're a very tolerant person. So you probably saw some behaviors that weren't really great, and you probably thought, hey, that's what unconditional love is. I'm here, baby. I love you. We're going to get through this.
But this is the thing. They don't start the abuse until they have you hooked.
Correct.
They love bomb you to death, the sex, everything. And then when they know they've got you like that, that's when the abuse starts, when they discard you. But then they discard you, but they want to come back. They always want to come back. And that was the whole thing. When he would leave, like, I know in a couple weeks he'd be calling me again to come back. But this last time, 7 months ago, I said no more, and he did. 6 weeks later, he called back. I said no more.
Good. Yeah, they do wait for you to either be totally smitten or totally dependent. Like sometimes they'll financially isolate a person, or, they'll sign a lease for an apartment, or they'll sign a marriage document. That's what happened when I got married. Like that night was the night that the abuse started. Like literally we signed the document, the ink was fresh, and that's when it started. And
did you say married?
Married, yeah, the day I got married.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I'm
never signing another marriage document again. Like,
oh
never,
God,
never.
I feel so terrible. Well, you know what it is? All these things, they look for what you need.
Right.
Now, some women need help financially. For me, he saw that I didn't have a lot of people around me, and I needed emotional, that emotional connection, and that's what he gave me.
Yeah, they're so
or pretended to give me. I'm sorry,
right.
Pretended.
They're so intuitive in figuring out exactly where it is they can get in there. What do you need? What can they do? And the thing is, like, now knowing what you can recognize that whole love bombing idealization thing was also toxic. Even though it didn't feel like that at the moment, it felt like incredibly positive, like so intensely positive. But it turns out that kind of intensity also isn't healthy. Somebody be like texting you all day or telling you like 1,000 times a day they love you. Now that's not healthy. So even though it appears positive, now it's a lot easier to recognize that if that's showing up right now, guess what's going to happen as soon as you get hooked or as soon as you get dependent. So as soon as you see that love bombing and the idealization, that's the immediate recognition that this isn't going to go anywhere good.
Right. Well, okay. I'm a not religious, but spiritual person, and I believe in affirmations and things like that. I don't know if you know about Louise Hay.
Oh, I love her.
I follow a lot. Okay. Well, I do affirmations about everything in life, but at this time, right before I met him, for about 3 months, I was doing affirmations for relationships. I wanted a serious relationship, and he was like the first guy that actually came up to me in a crowd and talked to me. And I thought, oh my God, that was God. God brought him to me. And I even told him that, that I had been, I called it praying. I said, I've been praying for a man, and you saw me, came up to me. And I said, I thought that he was a gift from God. And I always told him that.
Yeah, the interesting thing that I found with affirmations is you need to be very specific, because I've done this before too, where I've attracted a toxic person because I wasn't so specific. I said, I want this and that. And the universe said, okay. And they gave me this and that. But this and that also came with a whole lot of other mess that I didn't want. But I wasn't specific enough in the way that I was
Oh,
asking for that.
yes. You know what I said? I want a man. Well, I
Right.
got one.
You got one. The universe is like, there you go, girl. So now
I got a list that has 44 things on it.
your list? Good.
Yeah, my list has 44 things on it, what I want now.
Good. That's called being specific. Okay, someone wrote here, Louise, hey, go figure. Yeah, we were just talking about her last week. He also said, if I wasn't who I was, she wouldn't be acting like this. If you weren't the tolerant person, is that what you're saying? No, what do you mean? Oh, you mean blaming you for the abuse. Like if you weren't in some way, she wouldn't be abusing you. Is that what you mean? The only reason she has a meltdown is because of who I am. Okay. Because she's blaming you for her own condition, for her own feelings about herself and life and whatnot, reactions. Yeah. So, that's the thing about the abuser is they always get you to focus on your reaction to the abuse and not the abuse itself. Which in a way it's really sick because, there's a spiritual tenet, right? Which is true, which says that how a person treats you, it says less about you and more about them. And how you react to people says more about you and less about them. All that's true. However, that gets really perverted in the case of abuse, where someone uses that against you, and they say, well, it's all your reaction. It's not my actions at all. So I go and apologize and kiss butt. Yeah, because she's probably trained you to do that. And that's the easy way to calm that down, the meltdown, the freak out. And it's never enough to appease. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes, we learn dealing with toxic people that it's just easier to appease them, and not to fight, not to insist that you're right, not to insist on jealousy, on justice. Sorry. So screw that crap. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what they do? They'll they'll appreciate one day what you do, and then the next day the exact same thing, and it's
Yes.
everything's wrong with it.
Yes.
It's whatever mood they're in. You can never please them. I don't know why. I
That's
don't
why
know.
it's crazy making. That's why it can drive you crazy, because yesterday this was totally fine and today it's totally awful. And that's what keeps the ground underneath you constantly moving, so you never feel like you're standing on solid ground. And that's what they do to make you feel unhinged, because if you don't feel like you're standing on solid ground, if you don't feel grounded and centered, they can just beat you all over the place. They can say whatever and you'll always be jumping around, in response to that. It's crazy making. It'll drive you absolutely crazy.
Can I just ask you? Can the other people hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't they call in?
Some people have microphones. Some people's computer or phone devices do. Every now and then somebody will use.
Because I'm shy.
Yeah. We've talked with voice sometimes, but usually for anonymity, because I post the recording on YouTube. So what I do is I just put my face there, so nobody else's face or name shows up. But people who use their voice does come up in the recording. So some people want to be totally anonymous. and they just want to like type questions in and have me read them. Either way is fine. Like I totally get that some people are very afraid. Some people are still in relationships or being stalked by someone, or maybe they have a parent who's like checking out everything they're doing online or something. And, you know, just the fear of it, like, cause most of us, you know, that fear that they instill in the victim of silence, you know, like, don't speak about it. Don't tell anyone about it. There will be hell to pay if you say anything. Someone says, I don't want to be on audio because the narc could turn up anywhere. He's very concerned about his perfect image. Yeah, I think that's probably a fear that a lot of people have. And it's not an unfounded fear, because a lot of these people, men and women, narcs are total stalkers and, you know, trolling and things like that. So I totally understand people's need to have privacy and anonymity. And if you feel free, those who feel free, that's totally fine. You're welcome to speak.
Well, I mean, all they can hear is my voice, right?
Right.
They don't have to see my picture, my name, or anything like that, right?
No, that's
Okay.
not, because all that's going to be showing is my face. Even though people
Yeah.
are talking, they're just going to see my face in the video.
So you put this on YouTube?
Yes, I put the recordings on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, what else do you guys have? What other questions?
Okay, I have a question, and I've posted to other channels on YouTube, and I never get a satisfying answer. I want to hear something really horrible. And I know it's wrong to think this way. I always say that. I know it's wrong to want something bad to happen to someone, but what about the karma for narcs? It seems like nothing bothers them.
Right. So, yeah, I have thought about this over and over for decades, like what happens. And I had a breakthrough in my understanding of this a few months ago. There's a woman named Melanie Tanya Evans. She's like really famous in the whole.
Yeah, I've watched some of her stuff.
Okay, so she had this idea, and then I kind of took it my direction too. But her idea was that, you know, forgiveness is the part that returns the karma to the abuser. And until the victim forgives, they're holding on to that karma, essentially. Because the narcissist, what they do is they have negative feelings they don't want to deal with, they don't want to take responsibility for. So what they do is go and abuse someone else so that someone else feels angry, resentful, bitter, horrible. And then they have successfully transferred their negative feelings to that person. So what happens is the victim walks away with this heavy emotional karma. And I was like, wow, that's literally how the universe works. Because if you hear about, you know, like gravity and mass, right? Like if you think about space time, this would just be like a piece of space time, right? But like it warps with mass. So you get this like giant planet here, right? And everything warps, and now everything is like bending down into here, right? So you imagine that heavy negative energy. Now that's inside you. Now you're carrying this heavy mass around in the world, and you're warping the gravitational space-time, right? Attracting more of that negative, heavy emotion, even though that's not yours. Like that's not your karma, but your karma now is choosing to hold on to it or letting it go. Easier said than done, right? Because the forgiveness part is like the hardest part after, because you never get justice. There's no justice. There's no apology. Nothing has been done right. And that's why the forgiveness is all for you. It's all about you. It's not about the abuser. It doesn't help them. In fact, it actually hurts them, because it's like stamping return to sender on that karma. When you forgive and you let that go, that heavy mass of emotional karmic energy goes back to where it came from. Right. And so
Okay, well, that's what Louise Hay says forgiveness is. It's not about saying it's okay what they did to you. It's just letting it go, not dwelling on it, not thinking about it. Just let it go.
Exactly.
And so so much as that, I've done that. But, you know, I mean, I got into narcissism so much because, like, what was this? It was so weird, you know, and everything was systematic, you know, like he planned everything so well. And then I started researching and found out what it was. And that's why I'm on here now still talking about it. But that doesn't mean I'm still holding on to it. I haven't forgiven. I have. But I want to learn more so it doesn't happen again.
Right. Right. And the forgiveness, it's like, it doesn't just happen in one go usually. It's like layer by layer by
Yes,
layer by
yes. But at the same time, I can't stand the thought of that he just walked away scot-free. And I went through so much
Right.
pain, not only after he left, but the pain and the financial costs and everything he put me through when we were together.
Right. And that's the thing though, is like at first it seems like this, like this person's just going on and everything's fine and everything's going well for them. And how the hell is that fair? But as you do that forgiveness work and you release more and more and more of that heavy energy, it's going back to that person. They're dealing with
Well,
that.
I haven't seen him since he left, so I don't know what's happened to him. But
Right.
I want to hear someone tell me a good karma story, so I can just imagine something happening to him. I know that's wrong to think that, but I just can't say why did that? I mean, I went through so much pain, and he just walked away scot free. That's crazy.
Right, but he didn't. And the things that we don't see too, because the thing is that narcissist has to live with himself every day. You only had to live with him for a short period of time, and you saw how horrible that was.
Yeah.
So imagine waking up to that every day, every moment, all day long. That's who they have to live with. That's a pretty heavy karma in and of itself.
So
And
you're saying that that disgusting creature that I think of when I think of him in my head, that's how he thinks about himself?
oh yeah, that's why he's doing that. I think they overcompensate with this sense of like superiority and whatnot. But I think deep down, they know, like they have a sense of that emptiness. And at some level, they know that they are totally dependent on whoever they're sucking dry for supply. Like they have to wake up feeling so shitty. But again, they're not going to own that. They're not going to take responsibility for it. They're going to look for the next victim, but they're still like, that's them. That's what they wake up with. That's what they go to bed with, no matter what victim they have there and what supply they're temporarily extracting from that person until that person wakes up and realizes what's happening. And then they got to go find another victim. And it's a really empty life. Like these narcissists, they never get to have a truly intimate emotional connection. And by intimate, I don't mean sex. I mean emotion. I mean sharing the deep emotional, rich life with another human. Like that's what makes everything worth it here, is being able to share your experiences, your emotions with other people and having that amazing connection, and what creates that connection is the vulnerability. And they will never allow themselves to be vulnerable. They don't have that emotional spectrum to tap into that us normal people have. And so they never get to experience that. They only know people, in a way of like they're like some kind of inanimate object. They're just something that fulfills their needs, and they never get to really experience that deeper human connection. And that must be devastating. I mean, I don't know that they necessarily know what they're missing, but maybe they do. And maybe that's part of the jealousy, is they see people, or you tell them stories, right, of some emotional connection you had with someone, and they have this like raging jealousy of that because they have no idea what that's like.
Yeah, I've heard Sam Bacton. I listen to a lot of his videos, and he says that when you try to go deep with them, it scares them, and then it causes them to hate you.
Right.
If you show that you love them, then it makes them hate you more.
Right. It's like a contempt, like, because they
Yeah.
contempt, because they're like, how dare you love me? I treat you like shit. How dare you love me? And then they feel like it's even more deserved to treat you crappily. And
But then my ex used to tell me, like, during our breakups or a couple weeks apart, he would see couples walking together, holding hands and stuff, and he had to turn his head. It would make him so mad.
right.
But he didn't want that. He had every chance with me, and he didn't want it.
He doesn't. That's
You
the
know?
thing. Wanted it, but didn't want it. Wanted it, but didn't want it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what it is? I heard another guy. He was saying that he looks at narcissists like God. He compares it to food. Like they come to you empty, and then they nourish themselves off you. You're giving them all these rich nutrients, and they're giving you just junk food back.
Right.
So then when they leave you, they're all healthy, and you're sick.
Right.
Something like that.
Right.
But that's what it was. He would get his fill with me and then discard me and leave. And then when he ran dry and got empty again, then he would come back.
Right. But remember, that only lasts so long. And they know that, like, they have to find supply soon to replenish, or that's going to run dry. Like, I think hummingbirds have to eat, I forget how many times or every how many minutes hummingbirds have to eat, or they'll die. That's why they're like constantly out eating. And it kind of reminded me of that image of the narcissist. Like, they have to eat to survive. They have to suck somebody's soul to survive. And they know that, like, they have to keep doing that. Like, it's only going to last so long, and then they have to find another victim. And it's not probably that easy to find people to put all this energy, into that initial stage of love bombing and idealization. It takes them a lot of energy to do that, to be constantly texting, talking, hanging out, whatever they're doing. And they know, like, there's a price for that too. It doesn't last forever, just like your sickness didn't last forever. We all got out of these relationships exhausted, spent, holding on to our sanity by a shred, tiny string, but we recover because because we are who we are, and they don't get better. That's the thing. Like, the prognosis for the victim is significantly better, because if the victim is just a codependent, not another narcissist, the victim's going to get better if they want to get better,
Well, I worked on myself. I mean, like, you wouldn't believe. Affirmations, videos, books, tapes. Well, not tapes, but listening to Louise Hay on my phone. Just, oh my God, all day long, just trying to put myself back together.
Yeah.
And he didn't believe in any of that, and so that's why they have to suck other people's soul from them. And Sam Bagnon says that, like, I don't know what he's been doing since he's been gone, but if he didn't find another victim, then I call him victim. If he didn't find another victim, then he could go into actual psychosis.
Yeah, it's possible, or just like extreme depression and isolation.
Yeah.
Some of them become those, I think he calls it a schizoid personality, where, they go away somewhere by themselves, far away from people, and they just kind of live a very sad existence. Someone so true, Psychopath Free. Oh, did you read that book, Psychopath Free?
Yes, I just got done reading it, and I was going to make a comment about something I read, but I forgot what it was. But go ahead. I forgot.
Oh, I was just mentioning someone wrote that. I didn't see when that message came in. I guess it was a few minutes ago. I don't remember. Was that related to something we were saying in particular? I was wondering how she read it, as I'm aware she's on the phone and can't see the screen. Okay. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I have. And one of the comments I was going to make was, one of the things that he says in the book is, don't worry about not going out without makeup on, or is your hair right, or your clothes right. He said, people are not judging you the way that narcissists did.
Right.
And when I read that, it made me feel kind of free. Like I realized, yeah, people probably aren't judging me that way.
Right.
Because he did judge me very harshly. No matter what, it was always a comment, whether a good comment or a bad comment. He always had a comment on how I looked.
Right. Yeah. And the thing is, like, if you imagine, like, you ran into someone on the street and you said hello and you walked right past them, do you even remember what they were wearing? Probably not. Like, because you weren't paying attention to that, right? But the narcissist was, like, looking at every little detail. Do you always wear your hair like that? Do you always wear that makeup like that? Like, there's always something, because they're always honing in on anything they can find. But normal people aren't like that. They're not going to judge you like that. Someone wrote here, I believe the more time I spend thinking about them, it allows them to occupy my mind and thoughts. It gives them some type of power and influence over me. So I focus on my own karma. I try to be mindful of my thoughts, generous to others. That practice equals liberation from them. Worrying about their karma is like another occupation of mind, trapping you to be attached to them. Exactly. It's so hard. It's easier said than done, right? Because it's so hard to let go of, why isn't there karma? It's so unfair. Like, because we're all there, but that's exactly the point. Is like the more energy and emotion you're investing in that, it's like reinforcing that, and like he suggested, karma is the big picture. Yeah. Like he suggested, like bringing the focus back to you, focusing on yourself. And if you're lucky, you'll hear some story down the road about something, and somehow the universe will just give you a sign that karma was created, even if you never hear from him exactly, but some kind of random synchronicity takes place and you just understand, okay, the karma was balanced, but the more attached you are to that, the more you're just feeding that. It's really hard part, like a very key part of the PTSD after these relationships is the obsession that the survivor has about it, about every incident, about every phrase, every word, every look, like everything. Like I would remember waking up in the morning and the very first thought was that, and it was that all day long. Like anytime my mind was on idle, it was on that. And even when my mind should have been focusing on other stuff, it was on that. And so much time and energy went to that. And then I wasn't like getting better. I mean, I was getting better, but I wasn't like doing better in life. I felt like I was still held down and stuff, and I wasn't making real progress because all my time and energy was going to that. And just like you realize after you get out of the relationship, how much more money you had because you weren't wasting it on him. When you cut off all that time and energy investment in thinking about a person, you realize like how much time and energy you have. Like it's unbelievable how much we waste.
Yeah, but you're talking about, you're talking about obsession. I was obsessed for months and months. I mean, I would even have conversations in my head just all day long. And at night I have dreams 24/7 all the time for months.
Yeah,
It's always on my mind, always.
That's the key characteristic of the specific kind of PTSD that victims of narcissistic abuse have. Yeah, it literally sucks you dry. And in having to retrain your mind to focus somewhere else is really hard. But once, you start doing that and you start focusing on you and taking care of you and stuff like that, then you start realizing how much more time and energy you have. It's like, you don't even realize like that 24/7 was going to that, but you don't even realize just how much of like resources you have within yourself. It's like, it didn't even dawn on me until all of a sudden, like, and it wasn't just the relationship, but I started cutting out the toxic friends. I started setting really strict, safe boundaries around the toxic family members. And suddenly like everything changed in my life. And like, I didn't realize how much time and energy and purpose I could create in a daily basis when all that was just gone. Someone wrote here, attachment karma could trap you into being the narc's parent or something in the next life. And if there is still some level of connection, that's interesting. That's really interesting food for thought. Yeah, no, thank you. No, thank you. Yeah. Do you guys have anything else for tonight? I would rather be his punisher. You guys are awesome. All right. Well, if you don't have anything more for tonight, then I will wrap up this session. Thank you all so much for coming and for sharing your vulnerability, for sharing your experiences with everybody else. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. I'll see you guys soon. Sending you all a big hug.